Okay, let's go ahead and get started today. I'd like to welcome everyone to our webinar. This is our holiday edition, I guess you'd say. So Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and all those other season's greetings to everyone. This will be the last one, I guess, this year. We're going to take a break and then come back at the end of January, and we'll do our inroads, tips, and tricks. And then in February, we'll try to get to our drainage calculations webinar. Today is best practices for template creation, which seemed to be a pretty popular suggestion. So you've got Jason Littleton for probably slightly over an hour. Our apologies. Just a couple of things I wanted to point out. There will be another survey at the end of this, as usual. Give us your feedback, and help us set our schedule for the first few months of the year. Finish out the first quarter into the second quarter. PDHs, this is a kind of a hot topic. We've talked to the Board of Licensure, and we've worked out a way for people who are watching in groups to go ahead and get training credit for your licensure. But the deal is, if you're not registered, and by registered I mean actually logged in so that we have a list of you actually watching the webinar, we can't give you a certificate. But if you're in a group in your office, whether you're a cabinet consultant, whoever, if you guys want to have a sign-in sheet, that's kind of on you all then. We're not going to issue a certificate, but you can issue yourselves credit based on the honor system. And so we're kind of having to put that off on you all, but the Board of Licensure kind of gave us that suggestion, so it should be fine. So from here on out, if you'll just do a quick sign-in sheet, keep it for your records, you can take our certificate or make your own certificate, I guess, and pass it around if you need, a electronic or hard copy of that for proof. But that's a way to get around that for those who prefer to watch this in a conference room with a group. And I guess with that being said, we've got a little poll here, as usual. Just checking to see how many repeat offenders we have. Okay, that's probably good enough. And we're still picking up a few new people here and there, so that's great. Welcome aboard. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Jason. I assume you're ready there, brother.
Yeah, ma'am.
All right. It's all yours. Impress us with your knowledge.
Well, I guess prepare to be underwhelmed, but I'll give it my best shot. So today we're going to talk about best practices for template creation. And you might kind of wonder why we're doing this, other than that was one that you all seem to request quite a bit. In my opinion is, with your modeling, if your template is done well, the modeling is going to be easy. Or in the other situation, if your template's not done very well, your modeling is going to be pretty hard. So just to try and get a little bit of some best practices to make it a little bit easier on the modeling end of it. So the first best practice that we have is to have organized templates that excuse me, that applies to the file organization, how you're using folders. I know in our base library that we have a folder for components, we have a folder for ink conditions, we have a folder for example templates. You might have a folder for each job or each alignment, something to that nature. Second, organized template naming. I guess we can go on to the next slide. You want to name your templates logically and consistently. This is going to help others down the road if they're needing to come back behind you and pick up where you may have left off. So the more consistent you are and such, the easier it's going to be to pick up later. Also, point naming. Each template library has a point name list in it. This list contains some predefined point names, and the beauty of that is the styles are already associated with that point name. So if you wanted an EP, you select the EP point, it goes on ahead and applies the edge of pavement feature style. Use that list as much as possible. I think we've got, I don't know, somewhere in the order of 30 point names in there. If you think of any others, let us know and we'll get those added in there as well. Because what this is going to do, using that point name list, is going to make the naming consistent from project to project. And consistency is kind of what we're going for here. Is if we can get a consistent naming convention, it's going to make everything easier down the line if somebody needs to pick it up and go with it. So, and one thing to note, the point name on your template, if you didn't know that, it's going to become the feature name when your surface is created. So here's a list of the point names in our list so far. We've got points for added shoulders, center lines, ditch points, edges of pavement, lane lines, that kind of stuff. Again, if you think of any more that would be good to include there that we've missed, please send us an email and we'll get that included so that everybody has access to that. We do have one poll right now I'm going to launch asking if when you build your templates, do you use the point name list? And you got either yes or no, or I didn't even know the point name existed. So we'll get that poll kicked off. So it looks like our voting is kind of topped out a little bit, so I'm going to close that poll and share it with you. And it looks like about a third of you didn't even know what the point name list was, which, to be honest, I didn't when I got working with this either. And then about not quite half of you use that point name list. So I'm going to go ahead and get back to the presentation here. So another thing that's good to have, your naming convention, you can actually assign multiple points in the template to have the same feature name when the surface is created. That's a feature name override. That's something that can be used on every single point. Every single point can have a different feature name override, but at that point it's not going to do much for you. Feature name overrides are especially useful when you have, like on the end conditions, we have multiple cut and fill catch points. So for our fill slopes, we may have a 4-to-1 slope, a 3-to-1 slope, and a 2-to-1 slope. And each one of those points has to have a different point name. Otherwise, you can't have duplicate point names in your template. But what you can do is you can take those 3 points and assign all 3 of them the same feature name override. And what that'll do is it'll create one single feature from those 3 points when you create your surface. So that's something that's pretty nice to do. There's also similar things for component naming. You want to name your components logically. Unfortunately, there is no component name list. It's not similar to what the point name list was. There's nothing like that. So again, you want to be logical and consistent in naming your components, and watch your affixes, because it's really easy to get affixes just kind of stacked onto it, so you get left, right, right, left, or whatever. It's just not very clean. With the point names, you can see that because the point names displayed in the window, but with component names, they're not displayed in the window, so they could be in there like that and you not even know. Similarly, component name overrides, you can have multiple components have the same component name when the surface is created. Again, that's also useful with the end conditions because they may change. What this helps with is when Patrick showed about the visualization, the quick visualization right from the model, if each one of those end condition has a different component name, meaning they're not overwritten, when you turn on that shading, you're going to see a lot of gaps wherever that end condition changed. Whereas if you applied the override, it would stitch those together and you wouldn't have as many gaps to go back and clean up. So also, the dynamic settings dialog. Whenever you start building a template, always bring that up. That's key, because what it allows you to do is it allows you to change your point names on the fly and allows you to toggle the affixes on and off. You can key in precision input in there. You can snap to grids, and the way that if you use a precision input, the way the constraints are going to be placed is going to be based off how the point was placed with the precision input. So the dynamic settings precision input here, you've got you can key in a specific XY from 0, 0, or you can key in the DL is a delta X delta Y from the previous point. HS, horizontal and slope, key in a delta X and a slope from the previous point. VS, similar, delta Y with a slope. Now the OL and LS are actually going to be horizontal and vertical and horizontal and slope, but they're actually from the dynamic origin if you've got that set. And those two, the stuff that deals with the dynamic origin, do not set the constraints from that origin point. It's just going to be horizontal and vertical from the previous point. So let's see if we can get in here. Let me find my, okay. So if I'm going to build a template from scratch, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my dynamic settings. So there's a little box down here at the bottom scroll bar, or you can go to Tools, Dynamic Settings, and there's that Dynamic Settings dialog box that I've got. Again, you can snap to a grid up at the top. If you click on that XY, you can change it to horizontal and slope. Then you've got your point name, which if you drop that down has all the point names in the list. And as we change that point name, you're going to get the associated style already. And then you can apply fixes and do precision input if you'd like to. So we'll just go through creating some components real quick. I'm just going to deal with these first three, the simple, constrained, and unconstrained. The simple, what it's going to do, it's just going to place a block at a specified width, depth, and slope. So I can change that if I wanted to do my center line. There's my center line. I'll give this an asphalt name. Make sure I set my style here. PR asphalt surface, we'll give it that. Slope of 2%, thickness, I know we won't, but just for this we'll do 1/2 foot and then a width. I'm also going to set my step to 1 foot, so I'm snapping to 1 foot grids and I can snap directly to 0, 0. And what it does is it applies that point name at every single point on that component, which isn't really that helpful. But if we were to do a constrained component, what it'll do is we can change that point name. If I want to draw off this centerline point, that white crosshair tells me that I'm snapped to it. So then I want to go horizontal and slope, go negative 12 feet at 0.02, and I should have changed my point name. So if I change my point name here, now the next time I put a point in, we'll say XY, or DL, sorry, equals negative 0.5, because that was our asphalt depth, and offset of 0. Well, I should have done 0, negative 5. My apologies again. I'm getting a lot of double keystrokes here. And then I can snap back to my center line. Let me delete that point there. And then you have your unconstrained, which allows you to kind of draw, but it doesn't really apply any constraints to it. So let's look at an example template real quick. You can see all these cut points over here on these ditch cut. They're shown up with a red name. What that means is they have a feature name override associated with them. So if I go in and edit that point, I can see the point name is left cut 2 to 1, but use feature name override is set to left cut. So that would, and if I set this left cut 3 to 1 to the same thing, it'll create one single feature from all of those that have that left cut override associated with it. And a real easy way to get to it, you can do it individually like that, but if you go to Tools, Apply Feature Name Override, you can select multiple points in here and say, let me get all my centerline points, and I'll just give them a centerline. I know they're stacked one on top of the other, but just to show you what it'll do, I've highlighted all those and hit apply, so now they all have that centerline feature name override. And you saw the name change from white to red to denote that they have the override associated with them. Also, similarly for the component name overrides, if you wanted to do that, we've got the component name override under the Tools option. And right here you can see I've got all those left ditch cut set to component name override of left ditch. So that's kind of about the organization and naming type stuff. We'll go back to, let me get back to my slide. All right, the next one is KYTC provided components. We have, it's probably not as extensive as it could be, but we've got a library of pre-built components. And like I said before, we've got them in the components folder and the in condition folder. The components folder is going to contain backbone type components. So anything that's pretty much not an in condition is going to be in there. So you've got your asphalt pavement, your concrete pavement, as well for driving lanes, as well as shoulders. You've got earth shoulders, curb and gutter, sidewalk, barrier walls are all found underneath that components folder. Under the in condition folders, you're going to have your cut conditions. So if you wanted a V ditch, or a 2-foot flat bottom cut ditch for a special ditch, or your benching or fill slopes or anything like that would be underneath the in conditions folder. So try to utilize those as much as possible, because those already have a lot of the names and such set up. So I've just got a new template here. If I go in my component, if I want an asphalt surface, we'll do driving lanes, we'll do 11-foot lanes. So I can drag and drop, just like you're building with Legos. You can just drag and drop, and I turned on my mirror because I want to have both sides. Let me also turn on my fixes over my dynamic settings. Apply that, and you can see it's put in the left EP and the left EP surface, and also the right EP and right EP surface. If I wanted a base course, get the same thing, only on the base course, 11-foot lane. Make sure I get that white crosshair. I'm snapped on there, and maybe I wanted some base as well. So these are all built so you can just drag and drop right in there, depending on what lane configuration you have. And if you have different lane configurations, you can still use these, and I'll show you how we can change that real quick here in a little bit. So that's all for my backbone. Well, let's put some earth shoulders on there as well. We'll do a 2-foot earth shoulder just to provide some support, and then put my in condition, my V-ditch, just drag and drop on there. And I don't want any fill ditches right now, so I'll put the fill without the ditch. So there, in, I don't know, maybe a minute or two, I've built a real simple template to start with, just by using our predefined components. So use those as much as you can. The next one is talking about constraints. I touched on it a little bit earlier, but constrain as many of the points as possible in your template. I know on templates that I do, usually the only point that isn't constrained is my center line point. Everything else is constrained somehow. So, and that's just going to keep your template kind of tight and keep it doing kind of what you want it to do. Point controls in Roadway Designer are actually going to work by replacing the constraint that most closely matches a point control. So Wendy touched on this a little bit last time about the ditch, how you got to set it up with a horizontal and with a vertical and a slope constraint. Because if you go to control your ditch vertically with a point control, if you've got it horizontal and slope, and I'll show this here in a second, it's going to do some funny things. So we'll show you that here just coming up. And then also you can, where so far we've been looking at the components, you can actually look at how all the points are constrained to one another in the template by toggling the constraints button. So let's go back in here real quick. I've got this is just that ditch that Wendy was talking about. This point down here, this ditch foreslope or ditch front, if I edit that point, it's constrained by slope and vertical. So another little trick to do if you want to see how it's going to work is to test the point control. So if we're going to control that vertically, let's test the vertical point control to see what it's going to do. And it allows me, let me turn my step off because that's starting to, it allows me to see what a vertical point control would actually do to that component. So if I come in here and I change that to horizontal and test that vertical point control, you can see it's honoring that horizontal, but it's changing the slope because that's the slope's the only constraint that has any aspect of vertical control in there. So you want to be aware of how this is going to be used down the line and build your constraints appropriately so that it's going to perform the way you intend. So I'll change that back, and then also up here under the display box, it's kind of at the top towards the middle, you can display components or you can display constraints. So if I turn on the constraints, you can see how all the points are constrained to one another. So if you see this straight vertical line, that means that there's a vertical constraint, and if you hover over that point, it'll highlight where that point is constrained. So that DFS 4:1 is constrained vertically. It's constrained vertically from my shoulder point, and it's controlled by slope from that temp point. So that kind of diagonal line represents a slope constraint. Now if I do this temp point, it's controlled by horizontal and slope. So you can see that horizontal line represents a horizontal constraint. Just a quick way to show you how everything is constrained itself. So just make sure that you constrain as many of the points as you can to make sure that everything's going to be working the way that you intend. So the next one is probably my favorite. I know I'm a nerd, but I love parametric labels. They are very powerful. Parametric labels can be assigned to most of your constraints. You want to make sure you name your parametrics logically and consistent. And the same parametric label can be used in multiple templates. So if you have a corridor that you change templates in, if you make sure that the parametric label set up right, you don't have to do anything special to control those points. But it's case sensitive, so you want to make sure that you have exactly the same name in there, and I'll show you a trick to do that. What parametric labels do, it allows you to adjust the template in Roadway Designer by using parametric constraints. So you can taper lane widths, or you can change lane widths. My favorite, and I don't know if Kyle Chisholm's on here or not, but he's the one that told us about that, is when you're transitioning slopes from, if you need to go from 4:1 fill to a 2:1 fill, if you have that label set up on your fill slope, you can say, I want a parametric constraint to take the slope from 4:1 at station A to 2:1 at station B, and it'll do that transition for you. You can change your ditch widths or pavement depths. Anything that has a label assigned, you can change directly in Roadway Designer. And a side benefit of that is the parametric constraints can be imported and exported from Roadway Designer. Point controls, you don't have that functionality, but with parametric constraints you do. So let's go in and do a quick demo on that. And I'm just going to show you one of our example templates, the 2-lane rural. Let's turn the components back on. And let's see. Let's just go to this right EP. So we have a parametric label down here at the bottom. So we have a slope constraint and a horizontal constraint. On that horizontal constraint, we're saying that's the right lane width. So if we wanted to change that from 12 to 2 or 12 to 14 or whatever, we can change that on the fly. Also, if you pull this down, I've got the slopes. That's listing every parametric label that has a slope aspect to it. So the ditch back slope, I have all these parametric labels set up in this template. And that's one thing. You're only going to get a list of the ones that are in the active template. So if I go to my horizontal, I actually get both horizontal and vertical because I guess it's a linear thing rather than a slope thing. But you can pick that up and say if I wanted to go the bottom of my surface course, got my asphalt surface depth. So I can assign that to every point along the bottom of that surface. And if I needed to change that, I can. So I've got another template in here that I drew up this morning that if I come in here, I actually don't have any labels set up. So I have no horizontal vertical labels and no slope labels. So if I wanted to set this up to use the same labels as that 2-lane rule, I could try and key it in, and maybe I get it right, maybe I don't. A little trick that I like to do is just zoom way out here, select that template that I want to copy the parametric labels from. Let's turn my mirror off and just drop it in here to the side, and I'll come back and delete that later. But what that does is it allows me to come in here, this right EP, now I have access to all those same parametric labels. So that's the right lane width. And then this point here underneath, that's asphalt surface depth. So I don't have to, this DV, this slope portion, is actually going to be the right slope, so that I can keep my label naming consistent from template to template. One side note, all of our components and end conditions have some labels set up already. Unfortunately, when the affixes don't apply to the parametric labels. So if I go back into the template I built with my components just a little bit ago, if I edit this left EP, you can see I have a negative lane width on there as my label. It doesn't, for some reason, it doesn't apply the affix to that. So you'd have to go in and fix that. So instead of negative lane width, do left lane width. But a majority of them are already set up for you. So the next best practice is use of parent-child relationships. Where it's appropriate, it's a real quick way to display the control of a component. So say the child is only going to be displayed when the parent component is displayed. So it's helpful when you want to show a normal component only when a particular end condition is shown. So when Patrick built that minimum depth ditch to have a minimum 1 foot depth, let me just show you that. Here I've got his component, which that white component he had turned off, but that's the end condition. So that's what's actually solving. And then this orange ditch is just a normal component that's actually a child of that ditch. So if I went to test, you can see that that white ditch is solving, so it's showing the orange one. But if I come in here and take that end conditions infinite off, let's change this real quick. See, at 0, I must not have done something. Ooh, that's pretty steep. So there it's solving. But now that end condition fails, so the parent, that orange ditch, was a child of that end condition, so it's not displaying. So that's a real quick way to control the display of particular components. Another way is by using display rules, but be careful. Display rules, you can set up rules to control whether this component is displayed. You can compare two different points in the template to see if it meets certain criteria, and if it does, you can say, okay, if this happens, I want it to display, or if this doesn't happen, I want it to display. Something like that. Caveat, be very, very careful using display rules on end conditions. This one took me a while. It's because I know my end condition is supposed to solve, but it's not showing up. Well, what happens is the end condition processes, and then the display rules go through and process. So your end condition may have succeeded, but your display rule came along behind you and turned it off. So you want to be very careful with display rules on end conditions. I don't really have an example for that, but I'll show you how you can set them up, and maybe later on down the line we can do a specific webinar just on display rules, because they are pretty complicated. But up here on the, I just went to the component properties, and under display rules I clicked edit, and it brings up this conditional expression dialog box. So I can make any conditional expression I want up here at the top using rules from down at the bottom half. So template display rules would list all the display rules that are occurring in the template. So if I wanted to add one, you can either set up a rule whether a component is displayed, and that's going to be really similar to a parent-child relationship. The only reason I think you'd want to use that is to display a certain component when another component isn't displayed, because otherwise, if you only wanted it when it was displayed, you'd use a parent-child, but that's for another day. But you can also compare 2 points horizontally, vertically, or check the slope between them, and you can say less than, greater than, equal to, whatever value, and set that up. But that's all I'm going to talk about in the display rules, because they're very in-depth. The next one, use the Active Template tab when you're working with your template. What that's going to do is it's going to give you access to every aspect of that active template. Whether the component is displayed or not, you'll have access to it. It'll allow you to make wholesale changes to the parametric labels. Say my right lane width, instead of having a 12-foot lane, I wanted a 9-foot lane. I can change that right there, and any of those labels in the template will change immediately. It also will allow you to see which points are included in alternate surfaces, and it'll also give you access to any display rules in the template. So we'll go back to our example template, because I know a lot of those have parametrics and stuff already set up. So I just turned off the point names so you can see a little bit better. But if I go to this Active Template tab, it's down here along the left-hand side at the bottom. It gives me access to every point that's in that template. Whether the component's displayed or not, I can edit it. Also, it gives you access to all the components that are in that template. This is really the only place that you'll be able to tell what your components are named without editing every single component. So to make sure that you don't have any nasty affixes at the beginning there, use this to go through and check that out. It also gives you end condition branches. So I have end conditions starting at the right earth shoulder and the left earth shoulder. So if I wanted to look at the right, coming off the right, I have these end conditions. And then coming off this right fill point, I have more end conditions. So it's kind of showing you how those end conditions are built. If I had display rules in there, it would show me those. None of the example templates have display rules other than maybe the subgrade example, just because we wanted to keep stuff kind of simple. Parametric constraints. You can see all these parametric constraints I've got in here. If I wanted to change the DGA depth, right now it's at 4 inches. If I wanted to do a foot, I can do that, and it dynamically, automatically changes that depth to a foot. If I wanted to change the right earth shoulder width from 2 foot to 4 foot, it'll automatically do that. The slope, right now they have different slopes. Right now they're 4 to 1, 3 to 1, 2 to 1, and the ditch is 6 to 1. But if I wanted them all to be at 4 to 1, you can see that it's gone on ahead and snapped all those to 4 to 1. I'm going to undo that real quick. But that's kind of the beauty of parametrics and using this active template. So if you wanted to change something before you got to Designer, you can do it right there on the fly. And then also alternate surfaces, we only have one set up. But if I click on that one, it's going to highlight every point that would go into that alternate surface. And the same thing happens with the parametric constraints as well. It'll highlight the points that have that label assigned to it. So the active template tab is pretty cool if you want to make some mass edits to your template. Lastly, keep it simple. I said it before, on the example templates we did not do display rules because we wanted to keep them fairly simple. So simple templates versus Franken templates. The Franken template is just something just way too complicated for it to be of any use later on down the road. It's been kind of mashed together, a piece of this one, a piece of that one. It's just ugly. You can make templates as complicated as you like. You can make a template to model your entire corridor, to go from rural template to urban template to whatever you wanted. You can make that happen in one template. But the more complicated your template is, the more likely, the more opportunity you're going to have for errors in that template that you're going to have to go back and clean up. And these complicated templates are difficult for others to use, to follow you. I prefer using multiple simple templates just to model my corridors, mainly because I'm not smart enough to understand the others. But that's the end of the best practices. A little side note or two here. Typical section display. You can display the template from the ITL file in your DGN for your typical sections. Didn't know where else to put this because it's only a few minutes, but it's pretty nice that you can display that template right in the DGN. We have a preference set up to go on ahead and place the dimensioning on the typical section levels, the appropriate levels, but there's still going to be some cleanup necessary. The CAD operator is going to need to go in and place the line work on the right levels, but a lot of the hard part's done already. So you can just right-click on the template name and select display. So let's go in and do that on, we can do this template. This is our example 2 lane. So I come over here under my template list, right-click on that name, and down at the bottom I have a display. So if I click display, it brings up the display template dialog. So we've already got a preference set up. I'll go on ahead and load that. And that is available in the latest CAD standards, I do believe. And the only thing you need to pay attention to is, I don't know, let me see if I can make that bigger there. If you can see that, you can see the backbone is drawn in solid lines. The end conditions are kind of dotted. That allows me to select certain end conditions by clicking on them. Right like that. So I'm going to show my cut on the left and my fill on the right. Click apply and select, and my scale's off, so I'm going to undo that and set my scale real quick so that I don't get huge text. And I'm just going to do a 5 scale. So if I hit apply now, I'll close that and I'll minimize that. You can see it's gone in and drawn my template for me. And you see I changed that right over shoulder to 4 foot, so it's dimensioned at 4 feet. So what I can do at this point is just turn off the dimensioning and the text style. I'll select all those and put that on the typical section, the appropriate level. So I can just and then turn everything back on. And I just need to do a little bit of cleanup to get it to where I want it to be. But that's going to do a lot of the footwork for you. Okay, the last little piece we got, you can actually do everything that we did in the ITL, you can do in each individual template in the IRD. So you can make these edits directly in the IRD. I don't know when you'd want to do that. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but the capability's there. It seems like the potential downfalls don't make it worth the risk, because if you make your edits in the IRD, they can be overwritten when the template is processed or when the template is synchronized with the library. So all that work you just did in that template is gone now. Also, it can make it a little bit more difficult for people to follow your work, because I may pick up and say, oh, well, that's not in sync with what's in the ITL file, so I'm going to synchronize, and now I've lost everything that you've done. One good thing is you can copy your IRD edits back to the ITL file through the template library organizer. So just me personally, I like to make my edits to the ITL file rather than doing it in the roadway designer. So that's the end of what I have. Here's a list of all the best practices. We talked about making sure your templates are organized, your file is organized well, that your templates and points and component names are logical and consistent. Use your feature name overrides as well as the component name overrides. Whenever you're doing a template, make sure you have your dynamic settings loaded. Use what KYTC has provided for components as much as you can. Just going to, again, provide some consistency. Assign as many constraints as you can. Constrain as many of the points in the template as is practical. Use parametric labels as much as possible. Parent-child relationships and display rules are also an option. Just be careful with the display rules on end conditions. If you need to edit your template, use the Active Template tab. It's a real powerful tool there. And finally, just keep it simple. You don't want to make it so complicated that people can't follow you, or maybe you do, but I wouldn't think that would be beneficial to many. So with that, we'll take any questions that you may have.
Got a couple there, if you can just read them off.
Okay, we've got a question that says, if I've used an older version of the template library on my project that did not have all those point control names, or those point names, so I name them myself, do I need to go back and change my templates so they have the new template point controls? For example, the lane lines weren't included in that point name list. One thing that you can do is you can actually copy that point name list. If you go to Tools, Template Library Organizer, and this is how you would copy in other templates or copy templates in from the IRD. So right here on the left-hand side is my active template library, and on the right I'm going to go out and search for, I'll just go to our common files, so that's going to be the latest and greatest, most up-to-date. So open that as read-only. Well, maybe I'll have to do something else, but you can. I'm going to try that one more time and see if I can copy that point name list in. Okay, I'm going to go get a different file.
You're trying to open the XIN file.
Oh, well, that would be a good reason why it's not opening then, huh? You got to pay attention, right? Okay, thank you, Kevin. Let's try opening up that. It will open up IRD files, but it will not open up XIN files, in case you didn't know that.
See, I only slept through a little bit of it. I was paying attention there.
So then in that common files, I've got a list of all the templates that are available in there, as well as the point name list. So I can just take that point name list and drag it over here. And it says, do you want to replace the point names in your current ITL? Which, if yours is old anyway, sure, go ahead. And then you'll have access to all those new point names. Now, as far as going back through your templates to update the point names there, you can if you want to. If you don't want to, I don't reckon that you have to, but that's a way that you can get that stuff in there. What you could do at that point is, if you had a lane line, you just come in here at this point, pull down, and you've got your point name list will pop up, and you just select lane line. It'll change your feature style, and you just need to put in your affix at that point. So again, you can do that if you want, but it's not entirely necessary. So I hope that answered your question. We have another one here. Says, on your unpaved shoulder component, why do you have that guardrail point? Wouldn't that put guardrail everywhere? Yes, that's what he's talking about, is on our shoulder. If we've got, let's do a 4-foot shoulder, so it's at 8%. We do have that guardrail point in there, and yes, it would put that everywhere. If you didn't want it, you can delete it. It says also on your example templates, those do not reflect the new guardrail design memo where you just add the extra 1 foot. Yes, that is correct. We need to update that, and actually these earth shoulders were kind of set up to handle that new guardrail memo. So I hope that answered your question. We have another one on the point name list. It says, will dragging and dropping the point name list delete any you created, or just add the new point names to the list? I believe it will delete any of them that you created. Any of them you've created, it will actually go in, it will overwrite the entire point name list. So unfortunately, you can drag and drop individual templates in there. You can copy those, but the point name list, I think, is an all or nothing. If it's just going to overwrite the whole thing. So a little quirk, but you can see what you think, and I mean, maybe you can set them up in yours, or just add, or email us the ones that you created, and we can add it to the main one. So, does anybody else have any questions? How do you transition the slopes with parametric constraints? Okay, the slopes, I don't really have an example per se, but let me set one up real quick. So if I go in my RD, let me see if I've got something where I can load up an ALG real quick. Let's see. There we go. I think that's going to be everything I need. Okay, so if I come in here and set up, I'm just going to delete these real quick. And I'm going to set up a new corridor. I'm going to add a template. Well, shoot. Maybe. And so if I just come down through here, you can see it's 3 to 1. There it's 4 to 1. There it's 6 to 1. So say maybe I want to go from 105.50 at 6 to 1 to 106.50 at 4 to 1. So what I can do, because I've got that constraint set up, go to, in your roadway designer, go to Tools, Parametric Constraints, and I've called that one left slope. So I can select that left slope. I said I wanted to go from 105.50 to 106.50. And I want to go from a 1 to 6 slope to a 1 to 4 slope. And you can see that at 106.50, I'm at 4 to 1. At 106, I'm about 5 to 1, which really what I'd do is I'd go from 105.50 to 106, and then 106 to 106.50. But you can do the entire transition because it's actually transitioning the slope percent rather than the 4 to 1 or 6 to 1 or whatever. And you can see once I get back to 105.50, I'm at 6 to 1. So again, that's probably my favorite parametric constraint is transitioning that slope. So I hope that one answered your question. And then we have one more about how do you create your own point names. What you can do is you can double click on your point name list, and it'll bring up the entire list, and I've lost mine. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, there we go. So there's my entire point name list. I just double clicked on that point name list. If I wanted to name one, let's call it point name, and I wanted to give it a certain style of PR disturb limit, I can add that in there, and there's my new point name. So that's how you would create your own point names. Again, if you have suggestions, send them to us so we can get it incorporated in ours, so we can have some consistency at the end. How would you add the 2-to-1 slope for guardrail condition without overlapping your unpaved shoulder component? At that point, if you had, let me come in here, I think it was this one. Oh, that's one thing I forgot to do in where I was copying my labels. Just go back in and delete all your components, which I'm sure I'm going to miss some, but yep, sure did. But go in and delete them. Otherwise, that will be put in. If you apply that template to your quarter, it will show up. But if you wanted to, so say I had my 2-foot earth shoulder there, and I just wanted to do a 1 foot instead, I would just delete that guardrail point, and I would shorten that added shoulder up from 3 foot to 1 foot, so that now you're going to have, coming from that right shoulder point to the right added shoulder is going to be the total of 3 foot. That's something we need to address with the shoulder memo, but that's how I would handle it. I'd just drop that in condition in there and shorten that width from 3 foot to 1 foot if you've got your 2-foot earth shoulder there. So I hope that answered your questions. Are there any more? Doesn't look like we have any more coming in. Oh, let's see. Can you add the guardrail point on that 2-to-1 in condition to be in the correct spot? On that in condition, that's something we need to figure out is, and it may end up having to be like a parent-child type relationship or something like that, where we have an earth shoulder without a guardrail. We may end up having to draw just this without the guardrail and have that be a child of the in condition for 4-to-1 and 3-to-1, and then have another in condition that contains that guardrail. It's something that we need to figure out, and unfortunately we haven't taken the time to do that yet. So I'm sure that's probably not an answer you were looking for, but it's something we need to figure out. So would it be easier to just make that unpaved shoulder an in condition instead? Yeah, you can. You could start all your in conditions from this right shoulder, and for the 4-to-1 and 3-to-1, you don't have the guardrail, and then for the 2-to-1, the guardrail would be a part of it. So you could do that. Let's see if we can. So that's kind of what you're talking about. And then actually, and let me delete that earth shoulder component, so that now my 4-to-1 slope, if I check out this right guardrail, it's only a member of the 2-to-1 fill slope, as opposed to this right earth shoulder would be a part of all of them. So that could be a good way to do that. So and then someone mentioned that the template library within ProjectWise is not allowing people to copy that point library or point list in. Yeah, you probably just need to make a copy if it doesn't work directly from the common files. Just make a copy somewhere, and if you wanted, you could copy your templates into the new one that you've created. So, but it looks like that's about it. So, hope you all have a good holiday, Merry Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever else you celebrate. Just be safe.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for joining us. You'll have the survey after you close out the webinar. Appreciate your time, and like Jason said, happy holidays to everybody.